Welcome to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. Tonight, breaking down wide receivers from the 2023 draft, along with Trader Dan, my partner. Welcome, Dan.
How we doing?
Just kind of realizing how much I didn't know back on draft day about the wide receiver class.
It's always the case. Always the case.
Last year I drafted a lot of Treylon Burks, and to date, that hasn't looked real exciting. I mean, I guess it's looking better today than it did 6 months ago, but It still doesn't look real good. And so as we just start to talk about the receivers this year, we're going to just start right from the top and JSN. And while we're talking about this after week 15, and he caught a big touchdown pass in week 15, I guess what's your take? Is he was 106 when I look at the draft board, pretty consistently. We had Bijan go 1, 3 quarterbacks go 2, 3, and 4, and then Gibbs go 5. That was kind of where it is when I'm looking at the draft rankings. He averaged just over draft pick 6 in general, and so I guess that's where I feel like he went most times. I think the earliest he ever went in any of my leagues was 3, the latest number 9. So He was right there at the 6th spot.
Yeah. When we look at the first 4 receivers that came off the board with JSN, there was kind of no doubt that he was probably the best college receiver. He just didn't get the best landing spot with Lockett and DK Metcalf there, and in the way this he's been brought about with his snap percentage. He was only getting about 50% of the snaps. 6 or 7 targets or so a game, which really didn't bode well with fantasy football. I think it's kind of hard to say whether or not he was the right pick or not there. Obviously, right now, there's multiple other receivers you'd rather have there. But he's also in his first year, and I do think that he will always have a quarterback around him that can get him the ball, whether it's a veteran or they bring in a guy, they draft a guy, but they'll bring him along slowly. But I wasn't a JSN guy there to begin with at that spot. To me, especially in clown heads, I would have been a Dalton Kincaid pick up there for me. But ultimately that's where a lot of people went, and I think that if they got to redraft, that would not be the pick again.
How far down, if you were to redraft now, how far down would he go, or where would do you feel like do you see why he was the first receiver off the board out of the 4 of those receivers that were in the first round? I guess we'll start with that.
Do I see why he was?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I would have been Jordan Addison, and not because of I thought Jordan Addison was better. I just thought that Jordan Addison was going to have more opportunity with Thielen being gone. He had Kirk Cousins as his quarterback. They lost Dalvin Cook. It was going to be throw the ball. And I just felt that Addison was going to get more targets, more playing time. And I didn't think that maybe Addison was better than the rest of them. I just thought that he had the best landing spot.
So you look at landing spot as an ideal way to draft.
Opportunity.
Yeah. And I'm torn in that because sometimes I think cream rises to the top. Another analogy that I use a lot when I look at players. Opportunity is important, but I guess I go back to Jamar Chase coming in and being behind T. Higgins, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Garrett Wilson coming in behind Eli Moore, I didn't think that made any sense. And I look at, but yet cream always rose to the top. Justin Jefferson coming in behind Thielen, didn't think that made any sense.
Right.
And, I'm taking, when those things are all happening, I am taking Michael Pittman. Well, in the T. Higgins year, I guess I took that. But looking at the Chase year, I was kind of going running back or other ways. I wasn't really going for Chase because I felt like, I don't like that spot. And then, it's kind of vindicated when he started dropping the ball in training camp. And then I looked, ahead, and I was like not really on Garrett Wilson. I was more on Burks, saying, okay, they traded away A.J. Brown, who I think is pretty good, and straight up for a draft pick that takes this guy, like they must think he's good if they're going to trade. I get the salary cap piece, but I thought, okay. And then, I've kind of watched it, and I was like, well, geez, I don't know if opportunity really matters. I think these guys that are just good at football seem to, just escalate above other things. So I'm kind of torn there when you say that. And yet this year when I drafted receivers of those top 4, I actually preferred the guy, and I got the most of the 4th guy, which was Flowers. Now I didn't take him. I wouldn't have taken him above 2 of the guys. So I made sure 2 of the guys were off the board, trade back, or take 2. The only guy I really didn't take any of was Quentin Johnston. I just didn't like the way he caught the ball. I thought he was a body catcher and just didn't align with what I wanted to do. And I didn't think it was a brutal reach to go get Zay Flowers ahead of Johnston. I never really had that happen to me. I was always taking Will Levis there. Like, if Johnston was still on the board, I went Will Levis, and I kind of maneuvered around and said, okay, I'm not going to take Flowers over him. I'm just not going to take him. But I really didn't care if I didn't get Addison or Njigba. I really didn't care if I didn't get Njigba. I got some Addison. I liked him, but, truth be told, at the beginning of the year, I wasn't like, oh, man, this guy's better than Flowers. Now I would say that Addison's better than Flowers. I actually think he is better, but I didn't know that at the beginning. That was what I guess I feel like I didn't know that. I know producer Brad liked Addison from the jump. Like, he told me, oh, that's the best one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I liked Addison after the draft because where he got drafted. I think with all things being equal, they were all drafted, like you said, if one in doubt, just try to agree with the NFL. They all got drafted in 4 consecutive picks. So to me, it wasn't anything what the NFL had done differently. I just said, if Jordan Addison is Thielen, then you got a really good pick. And I don't think that I'm that far off. I think he's very, very good. So time will tell. But to be honest with you, my favorite receiver in this draft was the guy that's doing the worst. So we'll get to him in a minute.
Which guy did you like?
Quentin Johnston, yeah.
Pre-draft. Now he might actually be okay. Like, he might actually be okay now that he's going to have opportunity. I don't know. Like, we'll see what happens.
We'll see.
I've been buying him a little bit now. I just feel like the acquiring cost today is so much less than it was back on draft day. So, sometimes that's how I play it. Like, I think he's better than I thought. I think I really was down on him, but now I'm kind of acquiring him as throw-ins and deals. And so now I feel like I've gotten 5 or 6 shares of him just by, taking him from the free side of the equation. Looking at the second round receivers, I guess I didn't. I was drafting tight ends in the second round this year. So I know I was laughing at you a little bit. You were taking Kincaid early in the first round, and I was kind of like, I've never liked the first round tight end. I always feel like I could buy them cheaper. And even though I'm a huge tight end from Arizona fan, McBride, I wasn't a big draft him in the first round guy. I was a big buy him for a third round guy in the middle of last year. Like that was how I got a ton of him, and I have him all over the place. But I basically waited till the iron was right, and then I bought later. I bought Cole Kmet later. These are guys I don't really draft. I just buy them when the opportunity's right. And so I feel like that's always been my ammo with tight ends. But in the second round, I was, going. We'll talk about the tight ends at some point. But I went tight end, and so that means I missed out a lot of Mingo, Rashee Rice, Josh Downs, Marvin Mims, guys. And so wonder what you thought of them, and were you taking any of them? I know one of our Clownhead commissions loved Marvin Mims. I mean, he was an Oklahoma guy, and that's where he lives. And so I know you and I made fun of him. I remember us busting on him and saying, oh, he's going to suck. And, I'm not sure that he doesn't suck, to be honest. I'm not sure. Like, he's a return guy, but he just isn't. I don't know. He doesn't do much for me, but,
he wasn't the only one high on Mims. I ended up actually trading away a second round pick for next year's first, and the guy took Mims in the 2-3 spot. He was high on him. Mims had a phenomenal he had a phenomenal combine. Wow, my brain shot. And we all know Sean Payton. He does well with drafting his receivers. He seems to find gems. So he's a guy I hold. But the guy really who impresses me that I had a really bad read on was Rashee Rice.
Oh, it's incredible.
I see what happened with Sky Moore. They brought in Kadarius Toney. They were just throwing stuff at the wall and see what was sticking. And
well, Juju, Nicole Hardman, like
yeah. The list goes on. The list goes on.
Yeah.
And anyone named not Kelsey, I didn't want, right?
Yeah.
So I faded Rashee Rice. And boy, oh boy, if I could do it over again. he's so consistent. He's not going to put up the big 30 spot that Puka was putting up, but he's double digit guy. And boy, what I would do to have him on my roster going into my playoff run right now.
Yeah.
And another guy I've been really impressed with that was in that late second, early third is the kid from Green Bay.
Okay. So we'll get to them in the third round. I mean, I have his ADP down there, but what do you think of Mingo? So I'm a Mingo fan. I think he's an acquire now guy. I do think they're building the offense around him as we go. Like I didn't think he was a this year guy, but I do think that he's kind of got the makings as an X, and he'll probably. Yeah, he'll be the number one receiver there. Like I think that's the plan.
Yeah. I agree. The only thing that's kind of tough with Mingo is we're going to depend on Bryce Young, and Bryce Young right now is really struggling. I think if Mingo had gone somewhere else, that he would be showing much better fantasy football points. But he got a tough spot with rookie quarterback. Bryce Young's not really playing well. So that Mingo is a guy I buy. He's not a guy I sell. Right? Yeah. Does that make sense?
And I think that's what I guess I'm saying. Is I think he's a guy that you can acquire. Yeah. I like to buy guys off the discount.
Yeah. Bin, I think a lot of people are viewing him as a bust. I kind of went against my grain with Jahan Dotson this year. I don't normally give up on receivers till the third year. And at that point, if they haven't really produced, then fine.
And I think, to be honest, I don't think Johan. I think now's again the time to come back in and buy. I think you had an opportunity to win now. Like I think that was the balance that you had. Like I think right now he's kind of, that trade looks great for you, but I bet you on the other side of that trade you could almost go trade it back after the year after you've done the damage, and probably get a second coming back your way in addition, and just you could almost recover and just make a profit plus money, in the deal. So I think that's, and that's the kind of the beauty of how it's worked. And I like Josh Downs. I mean, he's kind of hit a wall now. He's the other second round guy. And so I'm looking at these second round receivers and I'm saying, geez, I kind of think outside of Mims, who's a punt returner, though, kick returner, so he might be something, they still have some ability. Moving on to the third round, I mean, so we have Jaden Reed, we have Jalen Hyatt, and we have Cedric Tillman and Keyshawn Boutte. All were second round or third round guys. Are there any of those that stick out to you? I know you're kind of bringing up
Jaden Reed.
But what do you think of Jaden Reed?
He it's the way they use him, right? They give him the ball in a couple rushes a game, and it's just enough to throw the defenses off where they had he's tough to cover. A lot of motion stuff, pre-snap stuff, and he made a touchdown catch the other day. I was like, this guy is freaking good. This guy is really good. And the hard part with buying these Green Bay receivers was, we don't know what Jordan Love is. They got Dobbs, they got Christian Watson, but Jaden Reed's the guy to get. If you can get Jaden Reed, you take him. Christian Watson can't stay healthy. To me, the best hands receiver on the team is Romeo Dobbs. The guy is just a human acrobat when it comes to catching those 50-50 balls. But Reed is the guy that is just he's so explosive.
If you think of the 49ers and we all respect their offense, I mean, I feel like Dobbs is the Ayuk on the team, right? But Jaden Reed is the Debo. And, we just use him as a weapon. He's an offensive weapon. He's used in the backfield. He's used as one end around. He's used And he's a rookie, so he's learned the offense. He's learned the positions. He can line up out wide. He can do a lot of things. And, I agree with you. I think I've kind of been bought in. I mean, I think Christian Watson's a little bit of the same kind of Debo role, but he's more of a Z. Let me watch it go.
He's an IR roster spot.
And then the other problem is, he can't stay healthy. Like he's just been an injury-prone guy. Looking at Jalen Hyatt, I guess I'm anxious to hear what you think of Hyatt. What do you think of? He's a Giants guy, so I know producer Brad loved Jalen Hyatt coming in, and I took some of him because I'm like, well, Brad usually does pretty well with his scouting on players, and in the third, I'm going to just take his guy and see what happens.
So, Hyatt is one of those boomer bust kind of guys right now. But I think a lot of it's got to do the same thing Mingo's going through. Unstable QB play. Tommy DeVito, he came in and was doing some things. And he liked to throw the long ball and stuff like that. But Tommy picks up a lot of yards with his own feet, and they don't get a lot of yards to begin with. So when DeVito's hogging up 70 of the rushing yards, and Saquon Barkley's getting 60 or 70 yards, and you only do 200 yards of offense, it doesn't leave many for the receivers. I think Hyatt is in the plans for the future for their team. But I just don't know that he's a guy that I consistently throw at and I trust. Now, I drafted him only because I didn't want to get burned by him. You know what I mean? Being my own team, like I didn't want to be, all right, I'm throwing a third-round guy. I'm throwing a third-round pick. I don't know if Jaden Reed's going to be good, Jalen Hyatt's going to be good. Who knows? So to me, I was like, I'm just going to take the guy who I root for. And if it's the guy that does well for me, great. If it's not, then at least I'm not getting beat by him. But I do think that he's part of their future plan, even though I do think they'd bring in a true number one.
So, I mean, I was kind of just looking. So I drafted 2 Mingos, 0 Rashee Rice, 15 Josh Downs, 0 Marvin Mims, 0 Jaden Reed, and then 8 Jalen Hyatt. So I guess I was sort of like that's, I was taking Jalen Hyatt there.
Well, he was the best receiver in college football the year before. I mean,
I couldn't take that. Then what do you think of Cedric Tillman, Cleveland, or Keyshawn Boutte?
I faded those guys in the drafts.
I had 0
just in those guys. And to be honest with you, time will tell with them. But the Bears offense were a mess. Patriots were a mess. Giants were a mess to me. Well, actually, Giants had Daniel Jones coming off the couple big performances, so I thought maybe a guy could take the top off defense might help. But I try to draft guys with good quarterbacks.
All right, so then we're going to go to the very end of the draft, the 4th round receivers, and I just want to get your idea of if there any of these guys jumped out at you. And so we have Tank Dell, Michael Wilson, Tyler Scott, A.T. Perry. Like they were all guys that went in the top 48, after 37.
Yeah.
And what did you think pre-draft? And then
so pre-draft, I had a buddy that was really big on Tank Dell, and he kept telling me, "Oh, draft him." Well, unfortunately, I got to the 4th round and had no draft picks left, so I couldn't draft him. And I wasn't taking him ahead of Hyatt only because of how I felt with that. But I was able to get Cedric Wilson in a deal, and I was high on Cedric Wilson only because
Michael Wilson, you mean?
Yeah, Michael Wilson. Okay. Only because he had a couple big games, but I just kept thinking they don't really have a guy after Hollywood Brown that like they can really depend on. So I thought that Wilson was going to be a guy that was going to be a target hog. Then Zach Ertz gets hurt and Trey McBride comes in, and I think they realized what they had there, and I think that kind of hogged some of those targets up. So I did buy him, but as far as those other guys in the 4th round, they're dart throws, and I think like if you got them in the 4th round, you cap them, and you're kind of happy you got them. But
I think it's kind of too soon to tell. So Tank Dell, I didn't take any until my final draft. I have one rookie draft that drafts right around Labor Day weekend, and I took him there. Kind of realized, this guy might be okay.
Yeah.
And So I have that one share. So I'm happy about that. Didn't go get him. I'm always really slow to go get guys because I think they can return to nowhere. But happy I have it. But I did fade him really. Wasn't drafting receivers at that stage. And then just a tick later, I was also high on Michael Wilson. I think the path to play, and he was hurt. So he was hurt for about 4 games this year. So I mean, I think when you're hurt in your rookie season, we just don't know really what you are. Like I'm not convinced that my 13 shares of Michael Wilson are bad, or that I drafted. Tyler Scott, I didn't draft any of them, but I like what I saw with the Bears. So, and I think there was a purpose in drafting him, and I think he's a replacement for Mooney. I mean, I think there's a lot going on there. So I've actually picked him up. He was a waiver free agent ad. Somebody got tired of him, and I just scooped him up. So I've got a bunch of shares now, but didn't draft any. And then A.T. Perry was like a fascination of mine right around the last pick of the draft. Like, try to figure out, okay, who's, the irrelevant player. And I was taking him. Now, in hindsight, that's really laughable because just a couple spots later was Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
And, he was kind of outside of his draft ADP is 48.8. So he was like in the 5th round, really, of rookie drafts. And so, having said that, he was kind of out after A.T. Perry. And so you could have just went crazy, on him. And then I'm looking down the ladder, Trey Tucker for, and Charlie Jones for Cincinnati. I mean, these are all guys. Trey Palmer for Tampa Bay. There's actually some guys that look like they're having meaningful years. I mean,
Trey Tucker's a guy to keep an eye on.
Who did you say? Keep an
Trey
eye on?
Tucker.
Yeah. Trey Palmer. I mean,
No, Tucker.
oh, Trey Tucker. Okay, Trey Tucker. But what do you think of Trey Palmer from Tampa?
I think he's going to get an opportunity with Mike Evans and Godwin both kind of aging, and Godwin, minus this past week, he's kind of slumping. And I think Baker really likes him.
Yeah, they seem to be grasping the offense. Like he doesn't. I mean, must not have the talent of JSN, but I feel like he's like that third receiver, like JSN is in Seattle. Like I don't think that is that much difference to the JSN Trey Palmer role. But definitely a difference in what he costs fantasy players to buy. But yet I'm not sure there's a difference in production. Like I feel like it's the same. Like they probably both play about 60% of the snaps. Like it's probably about the same.
Right.
In a run first offense. Like it just feels like everything's about the same. Now, is Mike Evans ahead of DK Metcalf? Probably. I don't know if Godwin's or Tyler Lockett. That might be
very similar, isn't it? It's very similar.
Right, and so
then you got Rashad White and Kenneth Walker. It's like
I mean, like I feel like
Baker and Geno.
and Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator for the Bucs, came over from Seattle this year. Like,
it's a very similar
secret that it feels like very interchangeable. It feels like very interchangeable, and so I mean that might be another encouragement I would tell people is, hey, Trey Palmer, in my mind, if you want to buy something on the cheap, that might be a receiver.
Or try to get him thrown in on a trade.
And again, somewhat you're the trading expert, and then we'll sign off. But when you're trying to get a guy like that, do you go in asking for that guy, or do you find a better guy that you really want, and then you just kind of be like, well, add that one in and go with it? How do you?
No, I just go get my guy.
Okay.
I try. Start that route. I don't like big trades. I like 1 for 1, 2 for 2. 1 in a draft pick for one guy, or 2 for 1. I don't like 3, 4, 5 guys. I just get confused. I'm like, how my team's gonna look.
That is so funny because I guess I think of you as a trader guy that wheels and deals, and I oftentimes will tell people like that's just too big for my brain. Like I can't. Yeah. I'm not going to trade 4 guys for 4 guys. That feels like I'm just changing the whole team. Like that doesn't even like I can't even figure out what the hell I'm doing here. Like I want to go, and I'm like you in this respect. Like I actually rather pay. I don't like to need anything. I really never want to need anything. But if I need something, I'll pay for it. I don't care. Like I'm not here to not pay for it. I remember in redraft this year, I didn't have a quarterback, and so I'm like, oh, Michael Wilson. Yeah, he's gone, and you give me Tommy DeVito. But it was after that bad, awful half-game outing by Tommy DeVito.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, that's some points are better than no points. You know, who's the worst quarterback on your team? Told me DeVito. I'm like, okay, what do you need for him? Well, I need a receiver. I'm like, take your pick. Any of them on my bench? I mean, that's seriously what I said. Take him. He's like, oh, how about Wilson? You wouldn't give me Wilson, would you? Like, send it. I'll accept it. Like that was seriously how the trade went down. And I'm like, you know, whatever. Like, I'm like, I think somebody said to me he paid a lot for DeVito because he was awful. That he was bad. And I'm like, hey, start 1 week.
Yeah.
You know, just need to start 1 week. I said I have the number 1 seed. I'm not going to freaking lose because I have no quarterback. Like I don't, you know, what the hell? I mean, who cares what? And I think that was after Wilson had like 9 targets that week or something. Like, you know, I mean, he really was pretty good. But I'm like, you know what? Screw it. You know, I'll figure out 9 targets from somebody else. That was my attitude. Like, I'm not going to figure out a quarterback from somebody else.
There's
like,
3 starting receivers on each team. There's 1 starting quarterback.
Yeah, and that's what I figured. I figured I'll find 9 targets somewhere. And even if I get 6, it's better than a 0. Like, I was really going to take a 0. And then, just as luck would have it, I had Browning on my roster, and Burrow got hurt that week, and then I could just had Browning and DeVito, and I could figure out which one I wanted to start. And so on that team this week, just kind of in parting, I'm kind of laughing because I was like debating my quarterbacks could be DeVito, Browning, Heineke. like that's what I'm trotting out here with. You know, like I have all these guys. Like, who do you pick on that mess? Like, oh, and Russ Wilson. So I've got like all like 20, 21, 26, 27, like quarterback on rankings.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Throw one out there.
You know, I was like thinking, wouldn't it be funny if I did Heineke and DeVito? Like, see if I could win a playoff game with that shit. So.
Well, my buddy's going with Carr and Flacco.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So I digress.
He had Stroud and Burrow. He's down Carr and Flacco.
Jeez. Well, good luck to him, and hopefully this helped. This is a breakdown of the receivers. I'm anxious to see, you know, when we start to dive into the tight ends next week. That'll be fun for us, and we can argue about drafting first-round tight ends. So hopefully we see Kincaid do something big this week, so we can talk about that. But
I don't have any Kincaid shares.
Until next week, we'll talk tight ends, and you know, I'll try to bring some spread for the bread, and good luck this week. You know, as you play in the Elite Eight, I'm excited for you. So
thanks.
I'll live vicariously through your Elite Eight team.
Thank you.
For now, so long. That's Dan. I'm Ed, the Fantasy Clown Show.